like in the studio?
The truth is, I mean, she produced the record with us, with Q-Tip and myself and Stevie. It's her idea. So it's like she knows what she wants, so it's not that hard giving her direction.
But I was like, oh, this person just tried to kind of like have a moment with me without being too specific, and in a studio, in the dark. And thank God I was like, ha 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 ha, and like laughed my way out of it.
Mariah Carey's testimony just ended Diddy's career. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation, but no one was prepared for what was about to happen. When the court clerk announced the next witness, a name so globally recognized it seemed out of place in the sterile environment, the entire room fell into a stunned 5-second silence. Not a single keyboard clicked. Not a single cough could be heard. Then, as if summoned by the collective gasp of the gallery, she appeared. Mariah Carey, the elusive chanteuse, the international superstar, was walking not to a stage, but to the witness stand. Dressed in a razor-sharp black suit with gold accents, her face partially hidden by oversized sunglasses, she moved with a slow, deliberate gravity. Flanked by her legal team, she looked less like a witness and more like royalty entering a hostile territory. Across the room, Sean Diddy Combs, who had maintained a stoic facade for weeks, flinched. It was a micro-expression, a flicker of the eyes, a slight twist of the lip, but in the silent room, it was a seismic shock. This wasn't in his playbook. Mariah Carey was not supposed to be here. As she took the stand and removed her sunglasses, her gaze was measured, determined, and fixed directly on him. A whisper rippled through the crowd, a shared sentiment that she was actually going through with it. This wasn't about music, rivalry, or romance. This was about a secret she had been forced to keep for over 20 years. And she was finally ready to talk. The prosecutor began, her voice cutting through the tension, asking Ms. Carey to please describe her relationship with Mr. Sean Combs. Mariah was unflappable. Her voice, usually reserved for filling stadiums, was now calm and precise. She stated that they were acquaintances, clarifying that they moved in the same exclusive circles of the music industry. They weren't friends, but they weren't rivals either. They were simply two powerful figures who coexisted. She explained they were on good terms right up until 2003. At that, everyone's attention snapped back to Diddy. He sat frozen at the defense table, his jaw tight. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Diddy remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on Mariah. The pop legend then leaned into the microphone, her voice dropping slightly, drawing every person in the room closer. She announced that she was not there to discuss rumors. She was there because of something she was told in private, something she never thought she would have to repeat under oath. She paused, letting the weight of her words hang in the air before delivering the final blow, stating that she had waited over 2 decades to say this. Before the bombshell of 2003, their paths had crossed countless times at award shows, industry dinners, and music video sets. Mariah testified that from the late 90s through the early 2000s, Diddy was an omnipresent figure, a man whose influence was felt in every room, even when he wasn't physically there. She recalled a specific moment at an MTV Video Music Awards afterparty in 2001. Diddy approached her, praising her latest album, before making a strange comment that stuck with her. He allegedly told her that she was too clean for this place, a remark she initially laughed off as an awkward compliment. But she testified that the words echoed in her mind for years. She painted a picture of a viciously competitive industry where allegiances were currency. To be seen with Diddy meant protection for some, but for others, it felt like a warning. Whispers were everywhere. Rumors of private after-parties where non-disclosure agreements were mandatory for entry. Stories of people who were asked to do things they weren't comfortable with. The prosecutor asked if it was about survival. Mariah's answer was chilling. She explained that if you refused, you didn't get the invitation again, and eventually, you didn't get the award show invite either. One name was always at the center of this shadow empire: Diddy. Not as a mentor, but as a master puppeteer. Mariah never challenged it publicly. She had no reason to. But on the stand, she admitted her unease had been growing, and it was all about to come to a head on one fateful night. Mariah's voice grew steadier as she began to narrate the events of July 19, 2003. She had been invited to an exclusive industry retreat in the Hamptons, hosted by a man her manager described as someone who was rebuilding his brand, Diddy. Exhausted from a music video shoot, she was reluctant to go, but her team insisted it would be a good look. The mansion was a sprawling seaside estate, shielded by 2 private security checkpoints. The guest list was a mix of A-list celebrities, media moguls, and a few unfamiliar faces she described as observers. People who weren't artists, but were clearly there to watch. By 10 p.m., she was ready to leave. That's when Diddy approached her. He was calm, almost serene. He asked if she wanted to see the VIP lounge. She protested, saying she was tired, but he was insistent, claiming he needed to clear the air about something. Reluctantly, she followed him to a side room, where two imposing bodyguards stood watch outside the door. The room was dimly lit, filled with velvet seats. He poured himself a drink and stared at her for what she said felt like an eternity. Then, he spoke the words that would haunt her for the next 20 years, stating that if they were to find out what he really did, it would be over. The courtroom was deathly silent. Mariah continued, explaining that he wasn't smiling and that he said it with the dead serious tone of a man who had mentally watched his entire kingdom crumble. She asked him what he meant, but he just changed the subject. When she tried to leave, he momentarily blocked her path, a faint, unnerving smile on his face. He promised that he would take care of her, his tone making it sound more like a threat than an offer, and then commanded her to just stay silent. She left the room without another word and checked out of the Hamptons mansion before dawn. The house was eerily quiet as she slipped past the security guards and into her car. She returned to her penthouse apartment at the St. Regis Hotel in Manhattan, shaken by what she had witnessed. It felt, she told the court, like a warning. But the warning wasn't over. Around noon, a concierge brought a black package to her door, delivered by a private courier. Her initials were written on it in silver ink, with no return address. Inside, she found $100,000 in pristine bills, bound in gold bands. There was no explanation, but beneath the cash was a smaller envelope with a handwritten note. It read that it was regarding the time she had available, and that she should enjoy the evening by herself, signed with thanks from the letter S. Mariah testified that her stomach dropped. It wasn't just the money, it was the chillingly familiar tone, the presumption that she could be bought. Her team later confirmed the package was delivered by a courier from a black SUV registered to a fleet frequently used by bad boys. Mariah stated firmly in court that she didn't want the money. What she wanted was answers, or better yet, distance. She placed the entire package in a hotel safe. Weeks later, she mailed it back to the estate with no return address, writing only that he knew where this belonged. The fear from that night, she explained, kept her silent for 2 decades. But seeing Diddy in court, facing accusations from so many others, she knew she couldn't stay silent any longer. The prosecutor's next question added another dark layer to the story, asking Ms. Carey if there were any other women at that 2003 party who expressed concern or who perhaps disappeared. Mariah hesitated, her composure faltering for the first time, before confirming that there was one. Her name was Lana. She wasn't famous, working in PR or marketing, and had confessed to Mariah that she felt out of place at the party. Lana had told her she'd accidentally walked into a side room and saw something disturbing. A man signing a document while another person stood over him, all under camera lights. She said she left the room quickly, but later that night, Mariah realized Lana was gone. No one mentioned her departure. 2 months later, a bizarre voicemail was left at Mariah's studio. A woman's hushed voice murmured that she shouldn't have seen that no one should talk to her, and warned Mariah to be careful too. And in turn accidentally deleted the message, but Mariah never forgot the voice. She could never be sure if it was Lana. In early 2004, she asked an industry executive to look into what happened to Lana. The response was a brick wall. The executive bluntly told her that the woman was gone, wiped from the map with no job, and deleted socials. He sternly warned her to stop asking questions. Mariah told the court she didn't have tangible proof linking Diddy to Lana's disappearance. Only the same chilling fear that had kept her quiet for 20 years. But prosecutors used her testimony to weave a narrative, connecting disappearing aides and silenced dancers to a pop star who was allegedly paid to look the other way. By 2004, Mariah's career was soaring again after her public struggles in 2001. But she testified that behind the scenes, something had shifted. The phone stopped ringing for certain events, private galas and label-sponsored parties, all connected to Diddy's inner circle. At first, she dismissed it as a coincidence. Then, the soft warnings began. A powerful record executive called her, praising her work before adding that he hoped she was not thinking of bringing up that evening again, as it wouldn't be healthy for her. The word healthy lingered in her mind. Another message came through a mutual acquaintance, warning her that bad things happen to women who talk too much. She was disgusted and enraged, but she was also smart. She told the jury that you don't survive this long in the industry without knowing when a warning is real. The final, unspoken confirmation came at an awards show in 2006. She saw Diddy across the room, surrounded by young artists. When his eyes met hers, he stopped smiling. He held her gaze for a long moment before giving her a slow, calculated smile that sent a chill down her spine. That smile told her everything she needed to know, she said. It wasn't about charm. It was about control. It was his way of communicating that she had stayed quiet and that she had been a good girl. After that, she had no more contact with him. But as she watched the trial unfold in 2025 and saw other women bravely coming forward, she knew silence was no longer an option. She declared, with a voice ringing with conviction, that she was no longer scared of him, nor was she afraid of the system that protected him. Because when the truth comes out, that system loses all its power. The prosecutor pressed further, asking Ms. Carey if she ever personally overheard Mr. Combs threaten anyone else. Mariah nodded slowly. She recounted a 2005 incident at a Manhattan recording studio. She had arrived early for a session and overheard Diddy in a side room, speaking to a young, rising female R&B singer known for her powerful vocals. Mariah was reluctant to name her, but confirmed her initials matched a former chart-topping artist. Diddy's voice was low but filled with venom. He allegedly reminded the young woman of who gave her those records and who owned her masters, telling her that there were rules in this business. He then made the threat explicit, warning that if she thought she could walk away, she should remember what happened to the last girl who tried. Mariah stepped back, shocked. Months later, that same artist abruptly canceled her tour, missed an awards show, and vanished from the public eye. Mariah told the court that the artist just disappeared, and no one in the industry ever asked why, because they all knew. The weight of that statement hung in the room. At the defense table, Diddy sat like a statue, his face an unreadable mask, but the damage was done. Mariah said, her voice thick with regret, that she should have spoken up then, but she was terrified. This part of her testimony, she explained, wasn't just for her. It was for every artist who never got the chance to speak. That I end the final part of her testimony. Mariah spoke of a more coordinated system of control. She described learning of shell corporations and shadow businesses used to hide payments, all linked to events Diddy was involved in. In 2008, she asked a former assistant to look into a non-televised event Diddy had sponsored. The assistant was bluntly told by an executive that they do not dig into that, and that she shouldn't either. The pressure intensified. Anonymous tips about potential scandals from her past were sent to her publicist. Then, in 2010, she was asked to present Diddy with a Lifetime Achievement Award. She refused. Within a week, 3 of her major endorsement deals inexplicably collapsed. No calls, no explanations. They just went dark. Her closing statement was not a whisper, it was a proclamation. She stated that she was not there to rehash her own suffering. She was there because she believed in the power of truth, and the truth, she explained, was that the world now knows who Sean Combs is. With that, her testimony was over. She descended from the stand and was whisked out of the courtroom by her security, ignoring the frantic questions from reporters. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Outside the courthouse, a media firestorm erupted. Her testimony became the leading story on every news network. But the real impact was felt behind the industry's closed doors. Her courage created a ripple effect. Rumors began to fly that 2 former executives from Diddy's record label had agreed to give sealed testimony. An ex-assistant posted a cryptic message on Instagram, stating that some people had silenced her while others had paid her, but not anymore. An anonymous source told Rolling Stone that if Mariah was brave enough to speak, then maybe it was time they all were. Celebrities who had long remained neutral began posting clips of her testimony with the simple caption, "Respect." Mariah Carey hadn't just testified. She had provided a spark in the darkness. The line she had heard in a dimly lit VIP room about it being over if they ever found out what he really did was no longer a secret.